Hello everyone, Thijs here again, and this time I want to do a review on the newest Hearthstone expansion, the 4th Hearthstone expansion, Meanstreet of Gadgetzan. It just got announced at BlizzCon. It will have 132 new cards, a lot of new cards coming into the game, and also a new mechanic with multi-class cards. The expansion is around the Meanstreet of Gadgetzan. As you can read here, 132 new cards, and it will come out in early December. So actually quite fast, 1 month away for the new expansion, and I'm really excited about it in general. I think it's really good for the game that there is something changing, and it will be there soon. So can't wait for it, and let's take a short look at what all the cards will be, and I will do a short review on all the cards. So here's the first card. I'm gonna do it class by class. The Kun the Forgotten King. 10 mana, 7/7 Druid card. 10 mana, you're like, wow, 10 mana, how can that be? With the choose one effect of either gaining 10 armor or refreshing all your mana crystals, I think actually this is a card with a lot of potential and can work out strong. The thing is that you can just play it and you refresh all your mana crystals. So at once you are having 10 mana, or you can play this card at least, you can innovate it out, it just becomes a 0 mana 7/7. So you can make your deck really rampy, really heavy. This is a card that has kind of an Aviana effect where you can play multiple minions a turn. You play this and you just refresh all your mana crystals. So I think it has a lot of potential. It might be in the current Druid versions that are around that are really focused on the more, that are really based on giants. I think it might be a little bit clunky to play a card like this in the deck, because you already have your giants that are working so greatly with spells. Where this card maybe wants to play with multiple minions a turn or ramp up really fast. So I think this card has great potential for a more ramp Druid based deck. That's why I think it has the most potential. Lunar Visions. It's another Druid card. It's a 5 mana Druid card. Draw 2 cards, minion that you draw costs 2 less. So what Blizzard is really trying here is to make the Druid deck maybe again a little bit more minion based. I think this card is gonna be for competitive. I always do my reviews more based on the competitive side of the cards. I think this card is just not as good as Nourish is. I think it's just a weaker Nourish with well, you already don't have the option to ramp. You don't have a choose one effect that sometimes stacks really well with Vendrell. But I also think that just drawing 2 cards, yes, minions drawing costs 2 less, but if I just look at like how I value draw 2 cards, I want to pay 3 mana for this. Arcane Intellect, Thought Steal. You have a lot of cards that for 3 mana that draw 2 cards. And this one is just a weaker one of that in that case where you have to pay 5 mana for it. And yes, it can become as good as a 3 mana card if you get like the value of draw that the minion costs 2 less. But I think it's just straight up like a little worse than Nourish. So I think this card is gonna be a little bit hard to work and will only be like really playable in heavy ramp Druid decks. But you still have Wild Growth, you still have Innervate, you probably still want to play Swipe and Refs and Living Root. So the inconsistency of this card in all the available current Druid versions is, I think that it's card will not be good enough. Here we have the Pilfered Power. 3 mana Druid card, gain an empty mana crystal for each friendly minion. So I think this card, I don't think this card is gonna be good enough. Reason for that is if you wanna gain an empty mana for each friendly minion, like this is not really how you wanna ramp up. I think it's really hard to have minions on board, multiple minions on board, and then still wanna ramp. It's just not the way you wanna. Like with Wild Growth, you pay 2 mana for ramping 1. So this card is already straight up worse than Wild Growth if you wanna if you only get one ramp by it, so you want to ramp at least 2 mana crystals. And I just don't think there are many cases where you want to ramp up. You have like it has to be in some kind of token Druid, but I think even also in token Druid, it's just so it's almost impossible to gain that amount of ramp. And I just also feel like at some point you have the over, like at some point you don't really want to ramp too much anymore. You just want to play straight up better cards, and I think the cost of this card is just too expensive for what it does ramping. So here we have the Mark of the Lotus. Mark of the Lotus, 1 mana, give your minions +1/+1. Really card that will probably work more in token Druid. If you look at the mechanic, you pay 1 mana for giving all your minions +1/+1. I think that's a great, or I think that it is actually pretty strong. If I look at Power of the Wild, the card I can compare it with the best, Power of the Wild gives also +1/+1 to all your minions, or summons in 3/2 Panther. And if you are looking at which effect of Power of the Wild is better, I would say you almost always want to make somehow the +1/+1 better. And now only doing it for half of the cost, this will make token Druid actually be really strong. There has been a lot of token Druid already around before the more spell damage Druid became viable, where there was more the Vendrel with the Power of the Wild, and I think, and with teachers, and I think Mark of the Lotus makes the teacher mechanic so much stronger in Druid. I think this card is going to be really great. I think this card is, for 1 mana, I think in Druid this card is really, really powerful, and this might make token Druid become close again with the current Druid version that is way more based on the spells and the giants. So I think for a token Druid, this card is actually quite strong. This card, I see a lot of potential. Really strong new Druid card here. The best Druid card that is announced for now. So yeah, this was actually the first card that was announced by Blizzard in the new expansion, and it is the Piranha Launcher. And the card looks great. It is awesome to summon some piranhas. But the card competitive-wise is of course absolutely trash. We have a 5 mana 2/4 weapon here. I don't know if any hunter wants to pay 5 mana for a 2/4 weapon. Like, I don't even want to review this card competitive-wise. Let's just have some fun with some piranhas for the people that want to shoot piranhas. But let's not take too much energy in reviewing this card competitive-wise. Another hunter card here, the Trogg Beastrager. Trogg Beastrager being a 2 mana 3/2. Pretty solid stats, like the 2 mana 3/2 is a really popular stat in general for a lot of minions. So if once these stats are coming, it needs to have like some better effects still. Otherwise it will probably not be working. But Trogg Beastrager, Battle Cry, give a random beast in your hand. +1/+1, and that's actually a really new mechanic Blizzard is doing with a lot of cards. You will also see later, giving cards in your hand buffs. And with the Trogg Beastrager, giving a random beast in your hand +1/+1, that's quite a strong effect for just a 2-drop. Like a 2-drop already being a 2 mana 3/2, but giving +1/+1 to a beast, I think that is quite a strong mechanic. Only thing that is might be a little bit rough for this card is it is not a beast itself. So there is like so much, it's hard for the current hunter. The spots that are not beasts in hunter decks are really rough. There are a lot of great cards also, like Auctionmaster for example. So that might be a little bit on the rough side. It might be more better in like a more mid-range based hunter. I think that card has a little bit problems with the current meta. I think the meta is too fast for slow hunter. Hunter has a really hard time coming back in the game. It's really good at snowballing, but has not good enough ways to get back in the game. So that worries me a little bit. And I think the card has potential, but I feel that in the current way, this kind of effect, this kind of hunter needs more. It's not gonna be good enough. It needs some anti-aggro or more of a comeback mechanic to make this card work. But the card for itself is quite cool. 2 mana 3/2 will, for example, also be a solid arena card in general. And I think I think the battle cry, this being a battle cry, not a death rattle, might also make it a little bit better. So you can sometimes play this together with another 2-drop beast, 3-drop beast in the mid game. Here, this is the only mage card, from what I know, being announced now. It is the Manic Soulcaster, and the Manic Soulcaster being a 3 mana 3/4. So that is already quite good stats. First, we always look at the stats. 3 mana 3/4 just being quite solid stats. And battle cry, choose a friendly minion, shuffle a copy into your deck. Really slow mechanic. I don't even know if this is a good mechanic at all. Choose a friendly minion, summon a copy into your deck. The problem with this mechanic is that games are not going to fatigue or anything. Like, there are really rare games happening where you draw your whole deck, so the extra additional card into your deck becomes viable. You really need strong ways, like you really need to copy the best card out of your deck to that I feel that card becomes strong. Maybe there are some more mage cards that can stack really well, but if you copy a mana worm and you draw your mana worm in the late game, I don't even know if you're happy with it. At that point, you don't even wanna draw your 1-drop anymore. So this is not a good card in general at turn 3, I feel. But it is 3 mana 3/4. So, and 3 mana 3/4 is always already solid. It's not that it will not be like a really bad card. It cannot become a bad card with the stats. But I just feel the battle cry is, I don't even know if it's positive, to be honest. I feel this might even be a negative battle cry to do this effect, to develop a 1-drop in your deck again that you don't want to draw in the late game. We are not going to fatigue at all. So in the current meta is way too fast. Games are getting decided really often by turn 6, 7, sometimes even earlier. So don't think this card is gonna make it. Wickerflame Burnbristle, a legendary for the Paladin. 3 mana 2/2, so we have here with Divine Shield. So it kind of reminds me a little bit on the Minibot. That was a 2 mana 2/2 with Divine Shield. This one is a 3 mana 2/2 also with Divine Shield and with Taunt. Damage dealt by this minion also heals your hero. I think this effect for Paladin, it's always quite nice. It's a positive effect. Paladin is one of the only classes having a lot of access to heal gain. Don't underestimate the effect of a 3 mana 2/2 Divine Shield with Taunt is super annoying. It kind of reminds, that all was also how the Annoyatron back in the day was. Like, the stats were not that great, but it was super annoying to deal with it. So I think this card is just quite strong. 3-drop also one of the weaker slots for Paladin. Paladin has a lot of good cards from turn 4 on, I feel, where the Consecration through Silver hits. And above that, the curve is insane for Paladin. So the weak slots of the Paladin are the 2 and the 3-drop. And this is a really solid 3-drop. I think this card is a great anti-aggro card. It's just super annoying for classes to deal with. 2 attacks seem to be also a great number at the moment, where a lot of minions are having 2 health or are close to having 2 health. So I think this might be a really... we had the Minibot, we had the Mustard. These were like the 2 cards that made Paladin viable again. I think this 3-drop is a really solid card for Paladin and might become really... I think it will help the current Paladins quite a lot, having this kind of anti-aggro card back now. Small Time Recruits, another new Paladin card, 3 mana Paladin card, draw 3 1-cost minions from your deck. So when I was reading this card, I was like, okay, so this card has to be in some kind of aggressive Paladin, otherwise it cannot work. For Paladin, you need to, if you all want to have like 1-cost minions at all in your deck, it has to be aggro Paladin. I don't think an aggro Paladin wants to play this card over Divine Favor, where you draw like 1-cost minions for 3 mana. I don't think this is any... like, drawing 3 cards for 3 mana is quite solid, but drawing all the 1-cost, you have to play like quite a lot of 1-cost minions. maybe I'm totally wrong on this card, and maybe it's actually quite good, but also in the early game you don't want to draw. In the early game you want to develop your board, your minions, and then you want to draw. And at that point that you want to draw, you might want to play a little bit, want to play a little bit more bigger stuff. So I might be totally wrong on this card, but I just don't think this card is, especially for Paladin. Like if it will be another class, I would consider this card being okay, but Paladin is just not the class that wants to go with this kind of mechanic. You have to play it in like aggro Paladin, what is an okay deck, but not the best at all. And the one slot is also not that strong at all. I don't think this card is gonna make aggro Paladin any much better, and I think Divine Favor is just a little bit better also. Well, back to the last card, we of course have now also the Meanstreet Marshal, and that is one of the new 1-drops, and that is a 1-drop for the Paladin that also might make that card a little bit better. But in general to this card, 1 mana 1/2, okay stats, not too great. Death Rattle, if this minion has 2 or more attack, draw a card, and that might actually be a pretty solid mechanic. I think this is quite of a strong mechanic, and 1 mana 1/2 draw a card will be is quite strong. It just might be a little bit hard to make this card work. Paladin has great access to Uldaman, Blessing of Kings, you can play it like a Defender of Argus, so I think there are, or just like a Direwolf, I think there are quite some ways to make this card work, but I just don't feel this, I just don't really feel Paladin is any, like with not having Minibot anymore or Muster, there is not much options for aggro Paladin at all. I don't think this card is gonna be too great. It might also Death Rattle. It's gonna be quite hard to make this card work. It can be fine, but I don't feel that Paladin has ways to do. This is like a great card for any future expansion, I think, where it just needs more cards for this card to work. The card itself is actually pretty fine. A new and here another Paladin card, and it's actually a new secret for Paladin. So what they are really pushing is a lot of early game stuff for Paladin in general. 1 mana secret, Getaway Kodo. When a friendly minion dies, return it to your hand. When a friendly minion dies, return it to your hand. So it's a slow secret actually, because it returns it to your hand. Yeah, I don't think this card is... Paladin secrets are just not that great, and with not having like any mysterious challenger, I don't see any reason to play Paladin secrets. So what is like, what are like ways to make this card work? What are like great cards? I don't think, I mean, you don't really want it with Tyrion, like yeah, Tyrion dies, you get Tyrion back in your hand. Is that what you want with the card? Maybe you want it with Direct. You kinda need to play this card with maybe even big stuff. I don't think it's that viable. Maybe buff cards. But yeah, then it's also a secret, so you can play quite well around it. I don't think this card is gonna be strong enough to make the cut. Paladin secrets just seem to be a little bit too clunky for me. My heater, guys. And here, another Paladin card, 2 mana Paladin card, a 2-drop. Actually, this is really the weak spot, like, for Paladin. I think Paladin is, the weak spot for the Paladin is a little bit the early game, and especially the 2-drop. Battle Cry, give all your minions in your hand +1/+1. Really hard card to evaluate, I would say. But I think... I'm just already happy to see like a Paladin card. 2 mana 1/1, of course that are like stats bad. So when does this card become valuable? How much value in your hand do you need to get from this card that you will say like, yeah, now I want to play it? Do you want to give like 3 buffs to cards? Do you want to give more? I think this card actually doesn't need to do too much to become really good. If it will give like 3 cards a buff, and give your hand +3/+3 kind of. Of course, +1/+1 on everything. But I think if this card gives 3 buffs, it's already good enough. It's also just a 2 mana 1/1, so it does a little bit itself in the early game. I would say this card might be becoming quite strong. Paladin is a class that in general plays a lot of minions. It's not that Paladin is a class that yes, you are playing some spells, but I think on 2, when it gets 2 effects, it's already quite solid. But I feel at 3 effects, yes, it is the card you want to play. So, and with it being a Battle Cry effect, not a Death Rat or anything, I mean, this card's actually the 2-drop Paladin might need. It's especially better for... It might be a little bit better for decks that are based a little bit more on the early game than the current Paladins are running. But I think also for the Anything Can Happen Paladins, for the Nazad Paladins, for maybe even Dragon. Like, I think for Dragon Paladins, this might also be a great card. And because that deck is really way more based on stats. So I think this card can be quite great. Quite excited about this card. And yeah, I think might be the 2-drop Paladin needs. It's not as broken as Minibot, but quite a good 2-drop. Okay, and now we are going to the Priest cards. Before we go to any other card, I can say you Priest quite get some cool and good stuff. The first card we are looking here is the Dragonfire Potion. Deal 5 damage to all minions, expect dragons. It reminds me first, of course, to Light Bomb, what was a 6 mana, also big AoE removal card. Really the weakness at the moment of Priest, that the Priest doesn't have it anymore. It was always the card that made Priest quite strong. And before we go to the next cards, but also going to the next part, it seemed to be that Dragon Priest is gonna become really strong. And for Dragon Priest, of course, this card is insane, where you have an AoE removal card that doesn't remove your own minions. It's just straight up a better Flame Strike for that deck. Well, where you play for 6 mana and you get a better effect and it doesn't affect your minions. So I think this is one of the best. It's just an insane removal card. It's really gonna be... It's just really strong for any kind of Priest. Really a buff to Priest. Really something they needed to become viable. Because this was a big weakness of Priest. And Priest is just the weakest class at the moment. So really, really exciting to also see more of these big spells. I was a little bit sad of all the minions that are coming in and not the big AoE removal spells. So really excited for this card. Super happy this is coming. And I think it's a really great card. Really, really strong. Another Priest card here. Drakonid Operative. 5 mana dragon for Priest. 5 mana 5/6. So really quite strong stats. 5 mana 5/6 is quite strong. Battle Cry, if you're holding a dragon, discover a card in your opponent deck. So besides just having a strong card, you also have quite a strong mechanic where it is a 5 mana 5/6 discover a card. It's not just draw a card, it's also discover a card. So you can kinda I don't know, I feel this card is quite insane when it also has like this discover mechanic. So you can like kinda choose which one is the best in this current situation. So, and discover is a really strong effect. Like there are cards in the game where you want to pay for discover, where you have Raven Idol, you pay a mana for discover, where you have the Ivory Knight, where you're totally fine also paying a little bit for discover. So I think this is also 5-drop for Priest. The 5 slot was the weak slot for the Dragon Priest. The 4 slot was fine with the Twilight Guardian, but Azure Drake is just not that great of a card for Priest. It just doesn't have much HP, so it doesn't really work. And yeah, this card just straight up makes the deck so viable. I think this card is just insane. It's gonna be always a 2 or 4 Dragon Priest, and these are cards that really gonna make this card really can make Priest viable again. If we also know already what is coming from the other cards, I think Dragon Priest gets quite an insane buff, and we will see Dragon Priest. I think Dragon Priest will be coming in tier 1 deck. Okay, to follow it up, going to the other Priest cards, we just saw the 2 new Priest cards, the really strong AoE removal Priest card and the 5-drop Dragon, what also seemed to be quite insane. Now we are having here a 1 mana Priest spell, Pint-Size Potion. 1 mana Priest spell, give all enemy minions -3 attack this turn only. It's a little bit hard card for me to evaluate, but I think the effect is actually it's actually quite, in some way, quite strong. It has some good synergy with other cards, like Shattered Pain. You have the 4 mana removal card, where it destroys every minion that has 2 or less attack. Shadow Madness, Kabal. So in general, a lot of Priest synergy, of course, with this card. Just wondering a little bit, even like for Dragon Priest, that might be a deck that is a little bit more on board. Like just giving all your enemy minions -3 attack, so you can trade, make better trades. It's a really hard card to evaluate. It's maybe a card that is more popular for a reactive Priest deck. But I think the mechanic is just in general quite strong. It might be a little bit hard to make it work all the time. Sometimes it will be a little bit of a dead card in your deck. Also has, what I think it also has great synergy with is Graced Alchemist, where sometimes the minion you are facing will have 0 attack, and if you switch the stats of a 0 attack minion, it will gain 0 health, so it just dies immediately. And so it is like a card that is working more in a reactive kind of deck, I feel. And that is always, reactive decks are a little bit hard to evaluate from just from here on. Great card that I think is going to make a lot of fun moments also probably happen. But it is a mechanic that might make the steal mechanic of Priest a little bit better. And it has some really synergy, I said, with the Graced Alchemist. So the card looks quite good to me. I think for 1 mana, this card can be quite good. It's not like an... Normally these Priest cards always have like 3 or 4 mana, and I'm like, yeah, this is not really gonna... I don't know, but you just pay 2 mana for it. But this card just for 1 mana, I think has a really, like for 1 mana, this is a strong effect. So I'm quite excited for this card. All these more reactive spell cards seem to be quite cool, I all feel. So it makes so much more things happen in the game than just playing your 1-drop or your 2-drop. So quite excited about this card, and looks quite good. And another new Priest card, and this is actually a 3-drop for a Priest. We all know what is the weakness of Priest. It is probably the 2 and the 3 drops are weak for Priest. Here we have the Kabal Talonpriest, 3 mana, 3/4 Battlecry, give a friendly minion +3 health. And it reminds me on the Dark Cultist. It was an old card 1 year ago. 3 mana, 3/4 Death Rattle, give a minion 3 health. And a Battlecry almost always is better than a Death Rattle. Like Battlecry getting the direct effect. And again, I think this is for Priest a great card. I think every card that we kind of see now for Priest is quite great. 3-drop is a weakness of Priest. 3 mana, 3/4 is like the stats you kind of want for a 3-drop. It's where you consider with a little bit of a decent effect, the card might become valuable. But 3 mana, 3/4 already really solid itself. I think this mechanic, give a friendly minion +3 health, is quite insane for Priest. Giving minions health is what Priest wants. And this having for an early game minion, I think is just so great. If you can just do this on your early game 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, I think you can really be more active on the board. And I think this is gonna make the Dragon Priest, the early game Priest, way better. And great card for Priest. Just great card. So another 1 mana spell here for Priest, Potion of Madness. Gain control of an enemy minion with 2 or less attack until the turn, until the end of the turn. Kind of a Shadow Madness here, but not for 4 mana, for 1 mana. Instead of stealing a 3 or less attack, it's a 2 or less attack. another quite good card. Just stealing an early game minion, you of course normally just want to steal like Death Rattle minions with this card. Kylie Grandmother is, for example, I think a card you are really happy with stealing. It also has synergy with the 1 mana spell we already saw, where you make the stats of minions 3 attack weaker, so you can just almost guarantee steal something. Of course you want to like trade it in somewhere so you kill it also, but just the synergy of the card, just the card in general already is quite strong. 1 mana steal and 2 attack minion. If you just steal a Knife Juggler and it trades with a Direwolf or whatever, like if it just goes 1 for 1 in that way for 1 mana is so good. Like I'm so happy with seeing all these priest cards, especially the spells I'm really happy with, because it makes the more reactive, like how the priest I like to see it, makes it more viable. I don't really want priest to becoming a curve deck. So I'm really happy to see a lot of these spells are coming into the game. Another just for 1 mana. Again, if this will be a 3 mana card, I would say no, this is like a cool effect, but the cost is too high. Priest getting like the 1 mana spells, I think this might be the year of priest. I can see this becoming the year of priest. And really another good card here for priest coming up. Priest really getting a lot this expansion, guys. So now we are going to the next class. A rogue is here. We have Shaku the Collector, legendary card for a rogue. 3 mana, 2/3. Stealth. When this attacks, adds a random card to your hand. So I think it's gonna be a card that's really hard to attack twice with. It will often die for 3 mana, 2/3 stealth, not having a direct attack or something. It's gonna be quite rough that this minion attacks twice. So often it will be like a 3 mana 2/3 drawing a card, a random card from your opponent's class. So random card in your opponent class makes sometimes really crappy cards possible. It's kind of like how we already have it with the 2-drop for rogue that is kind of has like the similar effect. It's just a 2 mana 2/2. This is a 3 mana 2/3. Yes, it has stealth, but I'm a little bit scared of this card. I really am. I don't think this is a card that's gonna be in any kind of rogue good. I think the effect is also so random. Like for rogue, you don't really want this. Rogue more miracle kind of class that I feel is better, the spell related class, and you just don't benefit from. I cannot see like ever a random like the steel rogue, the burgle rogue or whatever. Like yeah, the card might be better than burgle, but this is not a card that is even close to becoming viable and competitive. So yeah, like it's cool to see a new legendary for rogue, but I don't think this is gonna be a strong legendary. I think it's one of the weaker legendaries coming into the new set, and I don't think you will see it much in rogue. I think the card is just stat wise too weak to become viable. Lotus Assassin, 5 mana rogue card here, 5 mana 5/5, so with stealth, so it directly reminds me on the Stranglethorn Tiger. Well, it is also 5 mana 5/5 stealth. That is an okay card, but not really a card you see in much decks besides maybe Hunter. So what is the effect of it? Stealth. Whenever this attacks and kills a minion, gains stealth. So it's kind of a stealth minion that can always go back into the stealth. That is actually quite strong. Stealth is a mechanic that is you cannot do much about. So it really is an like if it trades with a minion and it becomes a 5/2 or a 5/1 and it gets stealth again, the card might go 2/1. So yeah, it's a better card than Stranglethorn Tiger, for example. I'm just thinking a little like, how is this gonna be? How good can it be for rogue? Might be nice to have like these possible trades going this way. I just don't see, like, there's not any much synergy I can directly think of from here on. I mean, yeah, you have like Shadow Step, but that is not a great mechanic for this card. I mean, Stealth is really good in Rogue in general. Like you get access to getting Cold Bloods and so on. So maybe what I can also see is you play this card, it gets stealth, and then you can go on with your spells. Because Rogue is such a reactive class, and when you have like one minion staying on the board all the time, the only thing is it has to kill a minion to get the stealth again. So it is not viable with going face, make it, then it doesn't get stealth again. So yeah, it's an card has I can see this card becoming viable. At the moment I think it's still a little bit too weak. I don't think it makes any sense in any current rogue deck, but card has potential, I would say. Maybe with other rogue cards coming out, I can see this card giving a little bit more. From now on, with not having much knowledge about what other rogues cards will be, I don't think the card is strong enough yet. Counterfeit Coin. Gain 1 mana crystal this turn only. Oh my god, guys. What a card. Really interesting card, I have to say. It doesn't maybe look that interesting. But of course this reminds you in general on the coin. Gain 1 mana crystal only. It's kind of like a little bit like a weaker Innovate, but for Rogue. But don't forget what Rogue can do, guys, with this effect. Like, Coin is in general a really strong card for Rogue. And we all know how Edwin works, we know how Gadgetzan works. It's a really card for Miracle Rogue, and Miracle Rogue is just a deck that just wants their to draw their deck as fast as they can. I think this card is actually... you can have like maybe too much of these cards, because this card doesn't draw at all. So you are just sometimes starting with multiple coins, but I think for Miracle Rogue this card can be... I think like Rogue can do a lot with this card, man. Like Rogue can do a lot. It's a little bit different than a preparation because it can work with minions a little bit better. It makes Edwin quest things. It makes the Miracle Rogue making more miracles happen. And if Miracle Rogue players or Miracle Rogue people that just like the deck you kind of want more cards that can do the miracle. So sometimes this card can be really bad and you just don't do anything with this mechanic. But sometimes it might really make the combo better. I really still hope there are coming more combo cards for Rogue. And then this card can also be way better. I mean, just imagine you just coin your SI at turn 1 into the Flame Imp. Like, these awesome stuff can sometimes happen where Rogue might be coming like a better anti-aggro class in that way. But yeah, I really like this card. I just think these are the cards I like to see. The more, not minions, the more spells I like. So, yeah, quite cool card. I think it is quite good, I would say. Stolen Goods, 2 mana warrior cards. Give a random taunt minion in your hand +3/+3. Not good. I don't know about this card. I don't think it's that great of a card in any current warrior deck. All the warrior decks are not playing too many taunts. It's more removal warrior, dragon warrior, what is all possible. +3/+3 for 2 mana is quite... Yeah, it's at the mark where I would say, yeah, that is quite decent. It's not a minion itself, so you need to have it +3/+3. If it was +2/+2, I will never play this card. They really want to push that Town Warrior, but there are just not enough good taunts to do it on, I feel. Bluetooth Brave is like the one I'm directly thinking of. You play this one on turn 2 or turn 3, and then you play it on the Bluetooth Brave. Can be okay. I'm not gonna like immediately say this card is not good enough, but I feel at the moment card is quite weak. We don't know much about the warrior yet and what other cards are coming, but with the current available taunt minions, I don't think this card is gonna be strong enough for competitive warrior decks. I know a guy. 1 mana warrior card, discover a taunt minion. Yes, Blizzard, I know what you're trying. I know you want to try to make taunt warrior a thing, but I feel that there have to be like more good taunt minions. Currently, there are not many there is a reason why aggressive decks are so popular, why mid-range decks are quite quite having the better decks at the moment. I know a guy is... I can see that... I mean, Discover... Why do I want to play 1 mana for Discover a Taunt minion when there are not that good Taunt minions? Like, I would always play Bluetooth Brave. And that's it. Like, why do I want to Discover a Bluetooth Brave for 1 mana when I can also play it? So, with the current set of taunts, there are just so little taunts that are good, that you just, if you want to play these taunts, you just play them. Like, and there is not really much synergy with spells. Like, maybe with Pyromancer you can think of something, but the current way of how Warrior works, I don't think this card is gonna be too good. Maybe for Arena or something. I mean, it's maybe a more late game card, and then you can see which taunt you want. You probably want the bigger one or something that fits your curve. So yeah, can be like... Junie Below is a card that is not even played in Rogue, where Rogue has way more things they can do for 1 mana, where spells are having a lot of synergy. So, and Warrior is a class that doesn't really have that. So I'm a little bit worried about this card. As I said, more taunt things have to come out of this expansion to make this effect also better. And here we have Finja, the Flying Star, new Murloc, guys. New Murloc. So if we are just looking at the stats first, we have a 5 mana 2/4 Murloc. And when I see these stats, I'm like, okay. 5 mana 2/4. We gotta need a strong effect, guys, to make this card viable. Whenever this attacks and kills a minion, summon 2 Murlocs from this deck. It has stealth itself. So whenever this attacks and kills a minion, summon 2 Murlocs from your deck. So it has to kill a minion. But when it kills a minion, then you get 2 Murlocs. I kind of was thinking, like, can it work in any kind of Murloc deck? But 5 mana 2/4 stealth, guys. What? It's so slow. Like, when do you have to play the time? When do you have the time to play a 5 mana card past turn that has only 2/4 stats? I mean, this is really slow. 5 mana 2/4. I mean, it summons 2 Murlocs from your deck. So you can make your deck around this card. Like, you can play like strong Murlocs maybe to make it really good. But 5 mana 2/4, it's like the uber slow stuff. It isn't really a card that you want to play in anything Paladin, I feel. I just don't think it fits there well. And the card is kind of great. It can really work. The mechanic is really quite strong. Card is just super slow, so you really have to make like your deck around this, and Murlocs are quite cheap all the time, so it's not that you can put like 10 drops on the board. No, you just put small cheap Murlocs on, and that might actually hurt you a little bit. So hope it's a card that people will test out for sure. I also will try this card out. I think you can make really funny decks with this card, but it's gonna be really rough to make this card work. Auctionmaster Beardo, 3 mana 3/4 legendary. After you cast a spell, refresh your hero power. I just read it as a 3 mana 3/4. And let's say you refresh your hero power, you still have to pay your mana to do your hero power. It's not that you gain in hero power, no. You can, let's say you are at turn 5, you play 3 mana 3/4, you do your hero power, you play an Innovate, you can hero power again. Like, this is the best you can do. And then you have the Combatant being just way better, and in other classes, I also don't see any better synergy with this. Like, it only refreshes your hero power. It's like the Korala Drake, or like what even the Drake is from the Mage, where you can, yeah, you can do your hero power twice. Well, with this card, if you can play a spell, you can hero power twice too. Like, refreshing your hero power doesn't really do much. It's just so expensive to hero power twice. Hero power is just not that strong. Maybe you want it in Warrior or something, like play this card, hero power, shield slam, hero power. Like, this is like the dream, but then there are so many cards that do way better. So yeah, I don't think there's any good card. Maybe in Arena it can somehow work where it gets a little bit better. where you hero power twice with doing a spell, then it can becoming like a decent trade drop. Of course, the stats on the card are decent, but I don't think this card is any strong. The only deck that really wants to hero power often is Warrior. But even in Warrior, like, yeah, maybe once you have the tank up, you tank up, play this card, play Shield Slam, and you tank up again. But it's quite of like a dream scenario where often this card is just not going to be good enough to make the cut. Okay, and here we have a pirate, guys. Patches the Pirate. 1 mana, 1/1 pirate. Charge for the pirates. After you play a pirate, summon this minion from your deck. I think this card didn't get the hype that it actually you will see it play. I think, and I might be one of the only ones, but I think this card is straight up broken. I think this card is so strong. I don't think this card is so strong, but I think this mechanic is really strong. I think this card is quite underrated at the moment. But summoning a minion from your deck, getting something for free on the board, is insane. In the current really aggressive meta, in the current where things are so tempo based, and if you just start the game with a 1 mana 1/1 charge on the board, like, that is so strong. I think this, like, if you just imagine to play this card with a Swashbuckler, you play this card with a N'Zoth's Mate. I think, like, it makes aggro warrior, like pirate warrior. I just think it makes it straight from tier 1 to almost high tier 2 to maybe even tier 1, where if it gets like a little bit more, if there is like one more pirate coming up in the new expansion, I think this like start the game with a N'Zoth's Mate and this patches the pirate. Like, how can any class challenges such a start any aggressive mid-range deck? Like, if you start a game like this and you already have a decent deck, like, I feel this card is just super, I think this card is super strong. Also, just like, I mean, you just play your deck with 29 cards, kinda, and I don't know, this card seems, this card seems really strong for me. I think it makes, especially, maybe it might be becoming also viable in Rogue. I can see it doing decent in Rogue, but I think it makes Pirate Warrior straight up an at least in high tier 2, maybe even tier 1 deck. I think the synergy that it has with the Pirate Warrior is insane. So I think this is a really, I think it is one of the top 3, top 5 cards out of the new expansions for what we have now. Wind up a Burglebot. 6 mana, 5/5. Whenever this attacks a minion and survives, draw a card. Like, yeah, I don't want to spend too much. Like, it's kind of like the card that the Hunter also had now, like the 8 mana, like the Sandworm, like 8 mana, 8/8. When it attacks and it kills, it can attack again. But this kind of mechanic doesn't work in the game, guys. Like, maybe in Arena it can like sometimes work. But come on, 6 mana, 5/5, yeah, mech. I don't know what that will do for extra. But whenever this attacks a minion and survives, or a card, like, yeah, cool. Way too slow, not viable. Let's go next. Fel Orc Soulfiend, 3 mana, 3/7. At the start of your turn, deal 2 damage to this minion. I kinda really look at this card as how I look at the Injured Blade Master, where this Injured Blade Master is kinda like a 3 mana 4/3, and yeah, it can be a 4/7 if it pulls out of your deck or if you heal it directly. I think it's just a straight up a little worse for me than Blade Master, because this card you play it, and yes, it is a 3/5 for some moment, but it gets another 2 damage. So once you are on your turn again, it is a 3 mana 3/3 at best, and you kind of have to play it for that reason in Priest, where there is synergy with the hero power, synergy with heal cards. But I just think Blade Master is just better. Like, the Blade Master stays at the health, it doesn't always like decrease, and Yeah, besides that, I cannot really see too much. Of course, you have the Mage card that sometimes that summons the 3-drop. It's a buff for that. Because it can now summon the 3 mana 3/7, and even if it gets damage, it's still good. So, yeah, maybe for Silence Priest, guys, maybe Purify can make something happen with this one. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this card is gonna be good enough. If there is anything where it becomes good, it might become in Priest. But I think Priest get quite a lot of good stuff now already that that this one won't make the cut. And Injured Blade Master is just better. And I don't think you can do much more with this card. Second rate Bruiser, 5 mana 4/5. Cost 2 less if your opponent has at least 3 minions. Yeah. I think this card doesn't work. Reason for that is, yes, if you have, it costs 2 less if your opponent has at least 3 minions. But if your opponent has 3 minions, you want to remove these minions. You don't want to play in 3 mana 4/5 taunt into it. And yeah, as a 3 mana 4/5, it might become quite okay. I think this card is also just okay. But if you want to make a constructed decks, you don't want to play okay cards. You want to play great cards, or sick cards, or broken cards. So for constructed, yeah, it's just an okay card. Maybe this is something that can do something with Taunt Warrior, like with some not better effects coming up. Maybe we don't saw much of Warrior yet. It might be okay. I guess for Arena, this is decent. Card is not, yeah, it's just an okay card, okay guys? Let's just keep it as an okay card. I cannot see this card just doing, it's just how Hearthstone works. Your opponent plays minions, you want to remove these minions and play your minions. You don't want to play your minion into his minions and then your opponent removes your minion and then you're just so behind. So it's just not, it's just the mechanic, it needed to have a little bit more or something. So it's not that it works that you can play taunt into taunt into taunt and that you win the game. Like Druid could do this back in the day, but it also was never that strong. So yeah, maybe, but I don't think it's for constructed. It's a hard card to make it work. Big time Racketeer. Let's just first look at the card, guys. 6 mana 1/1. So then you are like, okay, we have a 6 mana 1/1 here. What is this for insane effect that this card becomes viable? Battlecry, summon a 6/6 Ogre. Yeah, can we just play an Ogre? I mean, why do we want to play a 1/1 and play a 6/6? Like, I don't know, like, it's so 6 mana, you get a 1/1 and a 6/6. I mean, no, we're not gonna do that. I guess it's, again, like what I'm immediately thinking of is like, what is the synergy between other cards? Like Moonglade Portal is crying at the moment, where now your Moonglade Portal can summon a 6 mana 1/1. So that's, for example, like an insane nerf. I'm also looking at Evolve, where it might be like really good with Evolve, where you summon this card and then bomb, 7-drop, there we go. But yeah, Bran, for example. But like, this card is not on itself, you don't want to play it. Maybe there are reasons for other cards, or maybe Blizzard just didn't want Moonglade Portal to become viable or something like that. But maybe with other cards the card can become decent. But yeah, on itself, we're not gonna play this card, guys. Don't do it. Here we have the Grook Fu Master. So we have a 5 mana 3/5 Windfury. Well, we are already not playing 4 mana 3/5s. If this card will be 4 mana and it has a 3/5 Windfury effect, maybe I will play it because Windfury is really strong. 4 mana 3/5 Windfury, I will think about it. 5 mana 3/5, no, it's just too much. You cannot play this card. 5 mana 3/5, way too slow. People playing 4 mana 7/7s at turn 4. So just imagine playing this card 1 turn later. Nah, come on, guys. We cannot play. Senjin is like 3 mana 3/5, and people are like 4 mana 3/5s are really rarely played. They have to be really strong. 4 mana 3/5s have to be really strong to getting played. This is just, we're not gonna play this. Kooky Chemist, 4 mana 4/4, swept the attack and health of this of a minion. So we just have here a Grace Alchemist. It's just a Grace Alchemist effect, and instead of a 2 mana 2/2, we have a 4 mana 4/4. But think about the card. Why do you want to play this card? You don't want to play this card because of a 4 mana 4/4. You want to play this card for the Battle Cry. And if you want to play the card for the Battle Cry, I will prefer a cheaper version. So I will prefer having the Grace Alchemist, because the Grace Alchemist I play for the effect. I don't see the reason why you want to play this card over Grace Alchemist. For that reason, you play this card for the effect. So it's just, for me, straight up, and maybe I missed something, but for me it's a worse Grace Alchemist. And I don't see why you want to play this one over it. For Arena, it might maybe be a little bit nicer to sometimes have this body for Curve, but I think Grace Alchemist is just a better one. I like this effect a lot, so maybe if there are decks coming available, viable that has this effect, it can become strong. But otherwise, yeah, I don't think this card is gonna make... I don't think this card is gonna do anything more than the Grace Alchemist. Friendly Bartender, 2 mana 2/3, at the end of your turn restore 1 health to your hero. A lot of cards having to, like, for every 2 slot, often the minions are having either 3/2 or 2/3 stats. But if there are minions with 2 mana 2/3 stats, you want to have it like a quite strong effect. And this card doesn't really have that quite of a strong effect. Like, also early game, you really don't want to heal to your hero, or 1 heal is also not too much. So yeah, I don't think this is like a 2-drop. Yeah, in Arena it's just gonna be another 2-drop, but this effect is not doing anything on board, so it's gonna make it quite difficult for you. I don't think there is much synergy in any way with this card. So yeah, it's just a weak 2-drop, I would say. Just a weak 2-drop in my eyes. Mistress of Mixtures, 1 mana 2/2, Death Rattle, restore 5 health to both players. Damn, I like this card, guys. Just because it's quite a more anti-aggro card. It reminds me a little bit on Zombie Chow. That was like the 1-drop for the control decks that called battle the aggro decks. This one has a little bit weaker stats. So 1 mana 2/2 is a little bit weak in that way, but restoring 5 to both players, it's a little bit early in the early game to heal. But quite a cool card. I can see... oh, restore 4 health. I said 5, my excuses. Restore 4 health to both players. I like this card a lot. It's a card that just helps against aggro decks. It will not be as insane as Zombie Chow, but it's just an effect that I like. It's gonna be, in some decks it might become strong, and just to restore 5 health. I mean, it doesn't maybe do too much in the early game, but just think about it that for a class like Paladin, maybe Priest, but not so sure. I don't think Druid needs it anymore with Living Roots, but especially for Paladin, like just having this 1-drop, they always have, like, with them not having any, or not having much else, I can see this card being decent. Also for Reno Lock, I think for Warlock this is gonna be a such needed card. Warlock having no heal gain anymore at all, so I think for Warlock it's also gonna be amazing. And yeah, I like this card a lot. It's not gonna do miracles to make the control decks challenge the aggro decks better, but it's gonna help a little, and quite excited for the card. I really like it. Okay, and now we are going to the Lotus cards, and this is a really cool mechanic. We are having now multiple class cards in the game, guys. The cards will be that they are available for 3 classes. For example, this card, the Grimestreet Informant, will be playable for Paladin, Hunter, and Warrior. Or I mean, will discover a Hunter, Paladin, or Warrior card. Really nice mechanic here, or really cool mechanic here, I feel. It's like where last year Discover came into the game, this year we are getting the multi-class cards that are available for 3 classes. And yeah, quite excited about it. I think the card itself, 2 mana 1/1 discover a card, is gonna be quite weak. I don't think this card will make the cut. So yeah, hopefully we are getting, like, I'm quite excited for this mechanic, but there need to be coming a little bit more. But I'm just excited for this mechanic to come in. This card I don't think will make it. I think the card is a little bit too weak in general for a 2 mana 1/1. You don't really want to play these two. It's just too slow for a 2 mana. This is not a, like, yeah, it's maybe a little bit more late game card, but we already have, like, the Historian, for example, that discovers a dragon, but is already not too great of a card. And yeah, I don't really, it really reminds me on the Scarab, and Scarab just never could really make it. Maybe in some decks it can be become okay, but I feel it's gonna be not too great. I think it's too weak. Kabal Courier, Battlecry, discover a Mage, Priest or a Warlock card. So here we have a 3-drop, where we first had a 2 mana 1/1, we have here a 3 mana 2/2. I think this one is even worse, because we are paying 1 more mana for +1/+1 on stats wise. Yes, we are now having access to Mage, Priest and Warlock, what I don't even think is a buff. I think Warlock and Priest cards are two of the classes that are having the weakest cards. Warlock, because of their hero power, never really gets the best cards in the game. And Priest just is Priest. Then there are also a lot of synergy cards in Priest that are really working poorly in other classes. So yeah, I think this card is straight up worse than the 2 mana one. And this one where I consider the 2-drop also being a little bit more playable, because you can play it a little earlier and it has the better classes. This one I just think is even worse. And yeah, I don't think this card can make it. It's too weak for the mechanic it does. Lotus Agents, 5 mana 5/3, so really an aggressive card. 5 mana 5/3, the stats are really aggressive. Battlecry, discover a Druid, Rogue or Shaman card. Quite solid classes for getting a card, especially for the discover mechanic. But I'm not sure. I feel stats this card is really poor. Like 5 mana 5/3 reminds me a little bit on Conjurer, being a 5 mana 6/3 card with also a discover mechanic just for Mage. And it always was like hard to make that card work. Maybe with this one it can be like playable in a little bit better, but how for the 3 classes, I don't know. I think it's even worse than the 2-drop. Like, I would still prefer playing the 2-drop in that way, but yeah, it's I really have to see. Like, I still hope a little bit that there is a little bit more synergy for these 3 class cards, because on themselves they look a little bit weak, I feel. So maybe it's also not a design they wanted to make directly and to construct it too much. Maybe I'm underrating these cards a little bit, but I feel this card is just not good enough to make any kind of cut. Okay, and here we have the last card, guys, and this is a quite exciting card. Kazakus, a new legendary 4 mana 3/3, and the card itself, it's really hard to evaluate for me, like, how strong this card is, but oh my god, it is quite a cool card. If your deck contains no duplicates, create a custom spell, and there are a lot of options you can make. I'm not sure if they are all, if I can like look them up somehow. But what you can do with this card, the first option will be if you want to get a 1 mana, 5 mana or 10 mana card. And from there on you can create your own spell, and you just trust me on that, you can make quite strong cards from this. I think for Reno Warlock this is it's like the deck where you want to play it in. Reno Warlock is already like just an okay deck, maybe not like that strong considered at the moment, but it's just a cool deck. And in that kind, I think in Reno Warlock you can play it now, as long as Reno Warlock is in standard. You can play it there in constructed, and I'm just super excited about this card. Like, You gotta. It's just an. There are so many options with this card. It's such a unique card for the game. Like 4 mana 3/3. Yeah, it's not too great, but the effect is so strong that that it can just be, and you can also like create your own whenever you are like how the game is going. So if you need heal, you can make like something really big for that. Or I'm not sure all up to date with all the options that this card give, but you have like 3 steps. You can create your own spell. First you choose the mana cost of your spell, then you choose, and then you have 2 options where you choose kind of the ability of the spell, where it will always be in 1 cost, 5 cost, or 10 cost. And additional to the cost of the card, you get a great effect for that cost. So really cool card, super awesome. I'm gonna try this card a lot. I will make this card in some way viable. Just super excited to play this card in my decks. Constructed wise, not so sure if it will be all viable, but for sure Reno Warlock can include this card. So really cool. For now, this was the review on the cards, guys. I'm gonna do a weekly review, I think, on all the new cards. Now I had this one, where a lot of cards, because with BlizzCon there were a lot of cards announced, and now I will do a daily review or a weekly review and keep you up to date. Hope you enjoyed the review, guys. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.